Hello class, today we're taking a look at our comparing and converting unit review. First question just asks us to write equivalent fractions with a bottom or denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. Our first fraction is 4 over 5, and of course we just want to think of a number we can multiply or divide by the bottom to give us 10, 100, or 1,000. So the easiest thing I can do to 5 to make 10, 100, or 1,000 is to multiply it by 2. And just remember, to make an equivalent fraction, we've got to do the same thing to the top and the bottom. So 4 times 2 gives us 8 as our new top, and 5 times 2 gives us 10 as the new bottom. With 16 out of 20, I have two options. I could multiply both the top and bottom by 5. 20 times 5 would give me 100. Or, remember, you can also divide to make a equivalent fraction. So in this case, I can divide 20 by 2 to get 10. And since the top also divides by 2, this works as well. And we actually have the same fraction with those two numbers, 8 out of 10 in both cases. With 24 out of 200, again, I have two options. I could take my 24 out of 200 and multiply it by 5 to make 1,000. 24 times 5 might be pretty tricky to do. I might need to long multiply for that, but I can also divide here. So 24 divided by 2 is 12, and 200 divided by 2 is 100. Okay, so those are our fractions with a bottom of 10, 100, or 1,000. Now, why would we ask you to do that? Well, we know that with a decimal, we're looking for fractions with 10, 100, or 1,000 on the bottom because they deal with our place value. And place values are always 10, 100, 1,000 multiples of 10. So if we start with our first row here, we've got 0.22. That last digit, the farthest right digit, is in the hundredths place. And that means as a fraction, it has 100 on the bottom. And what's on the top? Well, just our digits 2, 2. And we always want to simplify fractions. Simplify means to divide your fraction until you can no longer divide it by anything. So both 22 and 100 are even. We know they divide by 2, and that gives us 11 out of 50 as our simplest form. For our percent, we want to start with a fraction out of 100, and in this case we already have it, 22 out of 100. When we have something out of 100, percent means out of 100, so 22 out of 100 becomes 22%. You can always replace out of 100 with the percent sign. Speaking of which, let's start with 36%. We know that's going to be 36, and instead of percent, we can write out of 100. Percent and out of 100 always mean the same thing. Now with that fraction, 36 out of 100, since I have 100 on the bottom, 2 zeros, I know that my decimal reaches the hundredth place, 2 places after the dot, and I fill in my digits from this top, 6 and 3, and then any blank digit is always a 0, so 0.36 is my decimal. Back to my fraction, I do need to simplify that, so they're both even numbers again. I can divide them by 2. That'll give me 18 out of 50. Both of those are still even numbers, so I'll divide them by 2 again, and that will give me 9 out of 25. 9 only divides by 3 and itself, and 25 doesn't divide by either of those, so that is as simple as it gets. With my 6 out of 25, I want to multiply to make 10, 100, or 1,000 on the bottom. I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 4 to get the equivalent fraction 24 out of 100. Since I am out of 100, I know that that will be 24% as well, replacing my out of 100 with my percent sign. And in terms of my decimal, I know that since I'm out of 100 with 2 zeros on the bottom, my decimal will reach 2 places after the dot, and I fill in my 4 and my 2 from the top. 0.24 is my decimal. In the case of 16.5%, we're going to start by writing our 16.5. Instead of writing percent, we'll write out of 100. Of course, percent means out of 100. And in a fraction, we are not allowed to have a decimal on the top. A fraction must be out of whole numbers. So we need to move this dot 1 time to the right. What do we do to move a dot 1 time to the right? We have to multiply by 10. This gives us 165 out of 1,000 as a better fraction. We are going to come back and simplify that in a minute, but for now, let's go over to our decimal column. Since we have 1,000, 3 zeros, right now we're going to be 3 places after the dot, and we fill in our digits 5, 6, and 1, starting on the right. Okay, let's finish up by simplifying our fraction. We've got 165 over 1,000. I'm going to start by dividing top and bottom there by 5. 5 goes into 1 0 times. 5 goes into 16 3 times, leaving us 1. And then 5 goes into 15 3 times. 33 only divides by 3 and 11. 200 doesn't divide by either of those, so that is our simplest form for this fraction. Again, don't be afraid to long divide there in that question if you need to. Okay, 8%. We're going to start with our 8. We're going to replace our percent with out of 100. Percent always means out of 100. While we're here, let's go ahead and set up our decimal. Since we have 100 with 2 zeros on the bottom, we'll have 2 places after our decimal dot. We'll fill in our 8 from the top, and then we fill in everything else with zeros. 0.08 is our decimal. Let's return to our fraction and simplify it. Both of these are even numbers, so let's divide them by 2. That gives us 4 out of 50. Let's divide those by 2 because they're still even, and that gives us 2 out of 25 as our simplest form. For our mixed number 1 2/5, converting that to a decimal and a percent, we have 2 ways we can go about this. We could convert this to a mixed number by multiplying our whole by the bottom and then adding the top. That would give us 5 times 1 is 5, plus our 2 from the top, and still with our denominator of 5 is 7/5. We can now convert that to a decimal and a percent like we always would. Or we could treat our 1 as one whole, and then also deal with our fraction 2/5, just as any fraction would. Those are 2 options for dealing with that mixed number there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my improper fraction. I'm going to go ahead and multiply it by 2, and that will get me a 10 on the bottom and 14 on the top. Since I have a 10 on the bottom with 1 0 in it, I know my decimal will reach 1 place after the dot. And I'll fill in my digits for 1, starting on the right. So my decimal here is 1.4. For my 14 out of 10, I can multiply that by 10 again, and that'll give me 140 out of 100. And once I have something out of 100, that is going to be my percent. So 140 out of 100 is 140%. Taking a look at 0.48. 0.48 reaches the hundredths place. So this is going to be 48 out of 100. For our percent, we do have 48 out of 100, so we can replace that out of 100 with our percent sign. Out of 100 means percent. Let's return to our fraction and let's simplify that. I'm going to divide both these numbers by 2 since they're both even. That'll give me 24 out of 50. They're still both even, so I'll divide them by 2. That'll give me 12 out of 25. 12 only divides by 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. And 25 doesn't divide by any of those, so that's our simplest form. 32.5%, we're going to start with 32.5 instead of percent out of 100. We need to move that dot 1 time to the right, so we're going to multiply by 10. That's going to give us 325 out of 1,000. And in this case, we can actually go ahead and divide by something like 25 if we wanted to simplify this. We do know that it is going to divide by 5, since they're both ending in 5 or 0. It's going to give us 200 on the bottom and on the top. 5 goes into 3 0 times. 5 goes into 32 6 times, leaving 25. 5 goes into 25 6 times. We can actually simplify that again, and that's going to give us 13 out of 200 divided by 5. 5 goes into 20, 4 times 40. Okay, and 13 being a prime number, that is our simplest fraction. I'm going to take my 325 out of 1,000. Since it's out of 1,000, we get 3 places after the dot with our 3 zeros. And we fill in our 5, 2, and 3. 0.325 is our decimal. For 8 on the bottom, we know we can either long divide this fraction or we can multiply it by 125. and that's because 8 times 125 makes 1,000. That's a useful one to have memorized. And so we can do 125 multiplied by 5 on the top. 5 times 5 is 25, or 5 carry 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12, carry 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. 625 on the top. Since we're at 1,000 on the bottom, we'll have 3 places after the dot. 5, 2, 6 filled in from left to right. Right to left, sorry. And then for our percent, we can start with that decimal. And remember, any number can be written as itself over 1. To make it out of 100, we'd have to multiply that by 100. And that moves our dot 2 times. So that'll be 62.5 out of 100. And 62.5 out of 100 is 62.5%. Finishing up, we reach the hundredths place here, so we have 112 out of 100 as our fraction. Both of those are even, so let's simplify it by dividing by 2. Okay, on the bottom we get our 50, obviously. 2 goes into 11 5 times, leaving us with 12, and 2 goes into 12 6 times. Those are still even, so let's divide by 2 again. 2 goes into 5 2 full times, leaving us with 16. 2 goes into 16 8 times, and then 25 on the bottom. 25 only divides by 5 in itself, and 28 does not divide by either of those numbers, so that's our simplest form here. For our percent, we can start with our 1.12 out of 1. Any number can be written out of 1. We're going to multiply by 100 to get 100 on the bottom. That's going to move our dot 2 times. Gives us 112 out of 100, of course, and that's 112%. Replacing our out of 100 with our percent. So this table here is really important. Okay, these are your 8 different conversion methods going between fractions, decimals, and percents. You have to have the procedures for these memorized and be able to identify them in different questions. Okay, let's take a look at these next ones here. We got 37.5% is greater than 0.39. Well, this would be 39%, and I'm pretty sure 39% is going to be bigger than 37%. So let's go ahead and say that this is false. Okay. 6/25 is greater than 1 over 4. Well, let's go ahead and make a common denominator to compare those. We get 24 over 100 for this one. And we get 25 over 100 for that one. Okay, obviously 25 over 100 is greater than 24 over 100, so this one is false as well. 2/5 is one of our memorized fractions. It's 0.4. If you didn't have it memorized, you could multiply top and bottom by 2 to get 4/10, which is 0.4. 0.4 is less than 0.6, so that is true. And then there is a relationship between fractions, decimals, and percents, of course, and we looked at it on our previous page with our table. Compare the numbers below and arrange them in ascending order. Ascending means lowest to highest, getting bigger. And we need to compare these numbers. I'm going to choose to compare all of these numbers as decimals, since they're all pretty easy to convert to a decimal. I'm going to multiply here by 5 to get 5 out of 10, which is the decimal 0.5. 60% is 60 out of 100, which is 0.60, reaching the hundredths place. 0.2 already is a decimal, and then 2/5, that is one of our memorized ones, but we can also multiply to get 4/10, which is 0.4. Okay, so just looking at our tenths place, we've got 5, 6, 2, and 4. Obviously, the lowest of those is the 2, so 0.2 is our lowest number. The next lowest is the 4, and that was written as 2/5 originally. The next lowest is the 5, which was 1/2 originally, and then finally our 60% is our last one. Order these numbers in descending order. That means greatest to least, getting smaller. Again, I'm going to choose to use decimals for these comparisons. I've already got 2 decimals here. With my 5 out of 8, I did actually convert that one up here. You might remember 5 out of 8 is 0.625 as a decimal. And then 87.5 is 87.5 out of 100. So we're reaching the hundredths place. We've got our 5. Oh, oops, sorry, we gotta convert that first. Gives us 875 out of 1,000. So that is reaching the thousandths place. 5, 7, 8 is our decimal. So let's go ahead. I'm going to actually write these on top of each other because it's going to be a little bit easier to see that way. So we got our 0.625, 0.75 is next, 0.375, and 0.75 are our numbers. And we can see that we can actually compare these just by looking at that tenths place. The biggest one in the tenths place is our 8, so that was 87.5% as the original way it was written. Next biggest one is the 6, which comes from 5 over 8. Next biggest one is the 7 from 0.75. And then finally our 0.375 at the end. Arrange these numbers in ascending order in their original forms and show evidence for your order. I'm going to again choose to use decimals for question A. Multiply by 25 gives me 75 out of 100, which is 0.75 as a decimal. This is 37.5 out of 100, which is 375 out of 1,000, which is 0.375 as a decimal. 0.5 already is a decimal, and this I'm going to multiply by 2 to get 8 tenths, which is 0.8. Let's go ahead and compare all those values. We've got our 0.75, 0.375, 0.5, and 0.8. And again, this is a question where we can compare just by looking at that tenths place. We want ascending orders, so getting bigger. We're going to start with our smallest number. That was the 3 in the tenths place, which was 37.5 as its original value. Our next smallest number is our 0.5. Next is 0.75, which comes from 3/4. And then our 0.8, which was 4/5 originally. In question B, we've got 60%, 1.3, and 1 1/3. With my 1/3, I'm going to multiply that by 3 to make a 9 on the bottom. That makes 1 3/9, which is 1.3 repeating. 3/9 is a repeating decimal, the 9 on the bottom. So we got our 3 repeating on top there. Okay. 60% is 60 out of 100, which is 0.6. Okay. So if we compare those decimals, we've got 0.6, we've got 1.3, we've got 1.333 repeating for our repeating decimal. Obviously 0.6 is the smallest. Next we have our 1.3, and then we have our 1 1/3 for 1.3 repeating. Question 6, arrange these ones in ascending order, show evidence. So same question, we've got 0.82 is a decimal here. And then here I'm going to multiply it by 125 to make 1,000 on the bottom. And then 7 times 125 will be my top. So let's go ahead and do that calculation. 7 times 5 is 35, 5 carry 3. 14 plus 3 is 17. Then 8. Whoops. No, we're good. So that's 875 out of 1,000, which reaches the thousandths place. Fill in our 5, 7, and 8. Let's compare these decimals. I got my 0.82, then I got 0.819 from the middle, and 0.875. We look here, our ones place is the same, our tenths place is the same, so we have to look at our hundredths place to determine which is biggest and smallest. Our smallest hundredths place is 0.181, so that will be our smallest number. Next we have a 2, so that came from 82%. And then finally our 7 out of 8 was the largest. Find a proper value, fraction with a value between these two fractions. Well, the easiest way to do that is just make the bottoms of the fractions bigger. So 2/5, if I multiply by 2, for example, is 4/10. 3/5, if I multiply by 2, is 6/10. So what fits between 4 and 6? Well, it would be 5. So 5/10, which is 1/2 simplified, fits between those two. Position these fractions on a number line, show your work. For these, we need to make fractions with a common denominator, and we can use mixed numbers to help us line up our numbers on the number line. I'm going to start by simplifying this middle fraction here. 2/8 is the same as 1/4. I'm going to convert my 7/4 to a mixed number. 4 goes into 7 one full time, which would use up 4 of the 7, leaving 3 in the remainder. So I've got mixed numbers here now. I do want a common denominator. So what's a common denominator for 4 and 2? Well, it's going to be 4. So I'm going to multiply this fraction by 2 to make it have a 4 on the bottom. And now I can go ahead and set up my number line. My smallest whole number is 0 for my just regular proper fraction. So I'm going to label my first tick 0. And then since my common denominator is 4, I need 4 ticks after that up until the next whole number. So 1, 2, 3, and then on 4 will be my next whole number. And then another 1, 2, 3, and on 4 will be my next whole number. I think that's all that I need. I don't need to go higher than 2. Now just remember, when I position fractions on a number line, I want to write them in the original format that they were. So 1 1/2 is 1 2/4. We're going to start at the whole number 1, and we're going to go 1, 2 dots past that. And so we'll label a dot here, and this is 1 1/2 as a fraction. For my 0 1/4, that starts at 0 and goes 1 tick past that. Obviously, that was the fraction 2/8. And then finishing up, we had our 7/4, which was 1 3/4. Starting at 1 and going 1, 2, 3 past that, and that is our 7/4 value right there. Same type of thing happening in question B. Again, I'm going to notice that I can simplify this fraction here, and that gives me 1 1/3. And, 1 1/2, that's better. And then I need a common denominator for 2, 4, and 2, which again is going to be 4. So I'm going to multiply here by 2, 1 2/4 here again. I do still have a mixed number here I need to convert. 2 goes into 5 2 full times, and that would leave 1 out of 2 remaining. Again, I need to convert that so it has a 4 on the bottom, so I'll multiply by 2, and that'll give me 2 2/4. Let's set up our number line. Our smallest whole number is 1. We need 4 ticks up until and including the next whole number. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is my next whole number. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 is my next whole number. Let's place our values on our number line. 1 2/4 starts at 1 and goes 1, 2 ticks past there. And that was originally written as 1 3/6. 1 1/4 was already in a mixed number format, so 1 and 1 extra tick out of 4. And then our last one there in blue, 2 2/4. So starting at 2, and then 1, 2 ticks past that, and this is the fraction 5/2. Flipping on to the back side there, question C. We again have 12/10. 12/10, 2/5, and 1/2. I'm going to notice that I could simplify my 12/10 to have, 6/5 would work. So let's do that. Let's divide this by 2, and that'll give us 6/5, which is 1 1/5. 2/5 is already a proper fraction. 1/2 is already a proper fraction. Let's make a common denominator here. Oh, and I actually do want a 10 on the bottom anyways, so that's fine. I've got here 1 2/10. Here I'm going to multiply to make 10 on the bottom as my common denominator. Whoops, I don't need to multiply by 10. I need to multiply by 2. And then here I'll have to multiply by 5 to get 10 on the bottom. That'll be 5/10. Our smallest whole number is 0 with these proper fractions, so let's set up a 0 tick. then we need 10 ticks up until and including the next whole number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is the next whole number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is the next whole number. Let's go ahead and put these on our number line. So 4/10 is starting at 0 and going 1, 2, 3, 4 past there. Write it in its original format. 1 2/10 starts at 1 and goes 1, 2 ticks past there, and that was 12/10 in its original format. And then 5/10 starts at 0 and goes 5 ticks past, and that was 1/2 as its original format. Question D, we've got 8/6. I'm going to notice both of those divide by 2, so that gives me 4/3. 2.25 is 2 25/100ths, which dividing by 25 gives us 2 1/4 or 1/4. And I can actually simplify this fraction as well by dividing by 2, and that gives me 2 1/6. I need a common denominator for 3, 4, and 6. So if I wasn't sure what that is, I could write out multiples of each of those. Multiples of 6 are 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18. Multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16. Multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and so on and so forth. But we've already got a common number here, which is 12. So let's multiply to make all of these have a 12 on the bottom. This one over here actually already had a 12 on the bottom, which is fantastic. We're going to multiply this by 3 to make a 12 on the bottom. And we'll multiply over here by 4 to make a 12 on the bottom. And 12 goes into 16 one full time, and that would leave 4 out of 12 remaining. The smallest whole number is 1, so that's what I'll label on the far left of my number line. Now, since the bottom is 12, I need 12 ticks up until and including the next whole number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's my next whole number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oops, went a little bit over, that's fine. 12 was my next whole number. And let's go ahead and put these values on there. 1 4/12 starts at 1. 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 12. And this was originally written as 8/6. 2 3/12 starts at 2 and goes 1, 2, 3 out of 12. And, yeah, that was originally 2.25. And then 1 2/12, or sorry, 2 2/12 to past whole number 2. Perfect. Okay, and last one here, we've got 5/12, 1/3, and then our 0.375, excuse me. With that, I'm going to want to convert that decimal to a fraction. So I've got 375 out of 1,000. Both of those end in 5 or zeros. Let's divide by 5. 5 goes into 3 0 times. 5 goes into 37 7 times, which would make 35, leaving us with 25. And then 5 goes into 25 5 times. 1,000 divided by 5 is 200. Let's divide by 5 again. Get 40 on the bottom. 75 divided by 5. 5 goes into 7 1 time, which would leave 25. 5 goes into 25 5 times. Let's divide by 5 again, and that gives us 3 out of 8. Okay. So let's think about our common denominator for 12, 3, and 8. Multiples of 12 are 12, 24, 36. Multiples of 8 are 8, 16, 24, and 32. Multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. And the first number there that is in common is the 24. So, what do I do to 12 to make 24? I multiply it by 2. This is 10 over 24. What do I do to 3 to make 24? I multiply by 8. I'll maybe write this one in blue. This is 8 over 24. And then what do I do to 8 to make 24? I need to multiply it by 3. So this is 9 out of 24. All of these are proper fractions, so let's start at 0. And then we need 24 ticks up to and including the next whole number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 3, 24 is my next whole number. Okay, let's put these on here. 10 24ths, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 24ths. 8 24ths, going to be 2 back from that, so 1/3. And then 9 24ths in the middle there, so that was 3/8, which was actually 0.375 originally. Okay, so with all those questions, being able to compare and convert mainly comes back to being able to convert those values between fractions, decimals, and percents. Make sure you're good with those 8 methods for converting between fractions, decimals, and percents in order to be able to complete the rest of the questions.